Welcome to Pages Turning in Sunlit Corners, a gentle journey designed to soothe your mind and guide you softly towards restful sleep. If you find comfort in this quiet story and wish to explore more peaceful narratives like this one, please consider liking this video. Before we join Martha in her tranquil cottage, we will begin with a short, calming breathing guidance to help you settle in and release the day. Should you prefer to drift directly into the story, you can find timestamps for each chapter conveniently listed in the description below. We invite you now to find peace in the simple rhythms of Oakhaven Cottage, in the scent of old books and chamomile tea, and in the quiet observation of sunlight moving across a room. Please find a comfortable position, allowing your body to feel fully supported by your bed or chair. Let your limbs grow heavy, releasing any tension you might be holding. Perhaps adjust your pillow or draw your blanket a little closer, creating your own cozy corner, much like Martha's favorite reading nook. This is your dedicated time for quiet and rest. Let the gentle pace of the story ahead be an invitation to slow down your own thoughts, to simply be present in this peaceful moment. Now, let's take a soft, easy breath together. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling the air gently fill your lungs. A cool, quiet intake. And now, exhale softly through your mouth, releasing the breath with a gentle sigh, letting go of the day's efforts. Notice the natural rise and fall of your chest or abdomen with each breath. Feel the warmth, perhaps, under the blankets. Feel the comforting weight of your body sinking slightly deeper into the mattress with each exhale. Imagine the feeling of warm sunlight on your skin, just as Martha feels it in her garden or by her window. If thoughts arise, simply acknowledge them without judgment, like noticing clouds drifting slowly across a peaceful sky. Gently guide your attention back to the sensation of your breath or to the sound of my voice. There is nothing else you need to do right now but rest, listen, and allow. Feel the quiet rhythm settling within you, like the steady ticking of Martha's grandfather clock, a comforting pulse in the stillness. Allow any lingering tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands to soften and release with each gentle outward breath. Feel yourself becoming more still, more peaceful, ready for the quiet story to unfold. Let the simple beauty of everyday moments wash over you, carrying you gently towards sleep. Now, let us turn the first page and step into the quiet world of Oakhaven Cottage. Chapter 1, The Morning Ritual. The first hint of dawn arrived not as a bright intrusion, but as a subtle lightening beyond the eyelids, a gentle suggestion that the night was releasing its hold. Martha stirred slowly, cocooned in the familiar softness of her quilt. Outside, the birds had begun their tentative morning chorus, a delicate counterpoint to the profound quiet within the cottage walls. She lay still for a few moments, simply listening, allowing the sounds to filter in gradually like watercolor paint bleeding softly onto damp paper. There was no rush, no demand from the day ahead, only the invitation to wake at her own pace. Pushing back the covers, the cool morning air met her skin, a refreshing contrast to the warmth she was leaving behind. Her feet found the smooth, worn floorboards beside the bed, cool and solid beneath her soles. She padded softly across the room, her movements unhurried, toward the window. Pulling back the heavy linen curtain just enough, she peered out at the nascent day. The sky was a pale, luminous gray, tinged with the faintest blush of rose along the eastern horizon. Dew clung like tiny jewels to the blades of grass in her small garden, catching the first shy rays of light. A deep sense of peace settled over her, the quiet beauty of the moment anchoring her firmly in the present. Downstairs, in the kitchen, the air held the lingering scent of dried herbs from the bunches hanging near the hearth. Martha's routine was a comforting ritual, each step familiar and imbued with quiet intention. She filled the kettle with fresh, cold water, the sound echoing slightly in the stillness. While it heated, she selected a mug from the dresser, a simple earthenware one, its glaze worn smooth in places from countless mornings like this one. Into it, she placed a small muslin bag filled with dried chamomile flowers, their faint apple-like fragrance rising to meet her. The kettle began to hum, a low, steady sound that grew gradually to a soft whistle. She poured the steaming water over the chamomile, watching as the pale flowers danced and swirled, slowly infusing the water with their golden hue and gentle scent. Carrying the warm mug carefully, she moved towards her favorite corner of the sitting room. Here stood an old armchair, upholstered in faded floral fabric, softened and shaped by years of use. Beside it, a small oak table held a stack of books and a little lamp, currently unlit. Sunlight, now a touch stronger, slanted through the mullioned window, falling across the worn rug and illuminating the dancing dust motes in its beam. Martha settled into the chair with a soft sigh, feeling her body instantly relax into its familiar contours. The warmth of the mug seeped into her hands, a grounding sensation. She inhaled the gentle steam from the tea, letting its calming aroma fill her senses. For a while she simply sat, sipping her tea, gazing out at the light strengthening in the garden. The bird song grew bolder now, a cheerful, complex tapestry of calls and replies. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked its steady, unhurried rhythm, a comforting heartbeat within the house. She watched a fat bumblebee bump lazily against the window pane before veering off toward the early blooms. These small observations, these quiet moments of connection with the world just outside her walls, were the threads that wove her days together. When the tea was halfway finished, warm and soothing, she reached for the topmost book on the small table beside her. It was an old favorite, a collection of nature essays bound in dark green cloth. The cover felt familiar beneath her fingertips, the embossed title slightly softened with age. She opened it carefully, the spine yielding with a gentle creak. The paper was thick and creamy, the text printed in elegant, clear type. The faint, distinct scent of old paper and binding rose from the pages, a smell she associated with countless hours of peaceful absorption. She found her place marked by a pressed pansy, its colors faded but its form still delicate. As she began to read, the words flowed smoothly, painting images of woodlands and meadows in her mind. The sunbeam crept further into the room, warming the floorboards at her feet. The sounds of the morning, the birds, the clock, the occasional soft settling of the old cottage timbers became a gentle background hum. Her breathing deepened, slowed, matching the calm rhythm of the turning pages. The weight of the book in her lap felt substantial, comforting. Here, in her sunlit corner, with her warm tea and familiar words, the day began not with haste, but with a quiet, unfolding grace. She felt the tension ease from her shoulders, a sense of quiet contentment filling her, as she lost herself in the simple pleasure of the morning ritual. Chapter 2. Tending the Patchwork Garden. The sun had climbed higher by the time Martha finished her tea and her chapter. It cast longer shadows across the sitting room floor and promised a gentle warmth outside. Setting her book carefully aside, she rose from the armchair, feeling the pleasant ease in her limbs that came from a slow, peaceful start to the day. She went to the back door, pausing for a moment to gather her gardening gloves, old soft leather, stained with earth and marked by use, and a small hand trowel. The door opened onto her small patch of garden, a lovingly tended space that was less a formal design and more a cheerful jumble of flowers, herbs, and the occasional determined weed. Stepping outside, the air felt soft and alive. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sweet fragrance of honeysuckle climbing along the low stone wall. The sun, filtered slightly by the leaves of the large oak tree bordering her property, felt pleasantly warm on her face and shoulders. She took a deep, appreciative breath, savoring the familiar scents and sensations of her little sanctuary. It wasn't large, this garden, but it was hers, a place where she could feel connected to the slow, steady pulse of the natural world. Her first task was always a slow wander, observing the changes that seemed to happen overnight. A new rosebud unfurling its velvety petals, painted in the softest shade of apricot. A cluster of forget-me-nots near the path, their tiny blue eyes turned towards the sky. The lavender bushes, buzzing quietly with the industry of bees, their silvery green foliage releasing a calming aroma as she brushed past. She noticed the small details, a spiderweb strung like a miracle between two stems, glistening with leftover dew, the intricate pattern on a snail's shell, as it made its slow journey across a broad leaf. Near the center of the garden stood a shallow stone bird bath, its surface reflecting the shifting patterns of the clouds above. As she watched, a familiar visitor arrived, a small robin, its breast a cheerful splash of color. It landed on the rim, head cocked, surveying its surroundings before hopping down for a quick, energetic dip. Water splashed in tiny droplets as it fluttered its wings, shaking itself vigorously before perching on the edge again to preen. Martha watched with quiet enjoyment, a small smile touching her lips. This simple recurring event always felt like a small gift, a moment of shared existence with the wilder world. She knelt then on a soft foam pad she kept for the purpose, beside a patch where young cosmos seedlings were pushing through the soil. Her gloved hands gently worked the earth around them, loosening it slightly, pulling out the few errant weeds that had sprung up. The soil felt cool and crumbly beneath her touch, yielding easily. It was satisfying work, this tending, this quiet collaboration with the growing things. There was a rhythm to it. Reach, loosen, pull, smooth, that felt meditative. Her movements were slow, deliberate, mindful of the delicate roots beneath the surface. The sounds of the garden enveloped her, the drowsy hum of bees, the whisper of leaves in the light breeze stirring the oak tree, the occasional cheerful chirp from the robin, now perched on the garden gate. The warmth of the sun penetrated the thin fabric of her shirt, feeling comforting on her back. She paused occasionally, sitting back on her heels, simply observing the play of light and shadow, the way the colors of the flowers seemed to vibrate softly in the morning sun. She noticed the texture of a fuzzy lamb's ear leaf, the intricate veining on a hosta, the delicate droop of a columbine bloom. Time seemed to slow down here, marked not by the ticking clock, but by the sun's steady progress across the sky and the quiet unfolding of life in the garden. She felt grounded, connected to the earth beneath her knees. The worries or stray thoughts that sometimes surfaced seemed to dissolve here, replaced by a simple focus on the task at hand, on the sensory details of her surroundings, the scent of the earth, the warmth of the sun, the soft sounds of nature. They all combined to create a profound sense of peace. When she finally rose, brushing the loose soil from her gloves, her body felt pleasantly tired, her mind calm and clear. The garden, in its quiet way, always offered this gentle restoration. Chapter 3. The Library. Visit. After a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and sliced apple, eaten slowly by the kitchen window overlooking the garden, Martha decided a walk to the village library would be a pleasant way to spend the early afternoon. The air outside had retained its gentle warmth, and the sun, though occasionally hidden by slow drifting clouds, still cast a bright, cheerful light. She put on a light cardigan, found her sturdy walking shoes, and retrieved her canvas library bag from its hook by the door. Locking the cottage door behind her felt like a quiet punctuation mark, separating the sanctuary of home from the gentle exploration of the world beyond. The lane leading toward the village center was quiet, shaded in parts by overhanging trees whose leaves dappled the sunlight onto the path below. Martha walked at an unhurried pace, her footsteps making a soft sound on the compacted earth. She breathed in the scent of warm grass and the faint, sweet smell of blooming elderflower from the hedgerows. Her focus wasn't on reaching her destination quickly, but on the experience of the walk itself. She noticed the way ivy climbed an old stone wall, its leaves a dozen shades of green. She listened to the distant bleating of sheep from a nearby field, a peaceful, pastoral sound. A cabbage-white butterfly fluttered erratically ahead of her, its wings like scraps of paper caught in the breeze. As she neared the small village square, the sounds changed subtly. The bird song was now mixed with the low murmur of conversation from the bench outside the bakery, the distant clink of teacups from the cafe's outdoor tables, the gentle rumble of a bicycle passing by on the cobblestones. It wasn't noisy, just the soft ambient soundtrack of a peaceful afternoon in a place where life moved at a gentler tempo. She offered a quiet nod and smile to Mrs. Higgins, who was watering the geraniums in her window boxes, receiving a warm smile in return. These small, silent acknowledgments were part of the village fabric, simple threads of connection. The library stood on one side of the square, a modest brick building with large arched windows and a heavy oak door. Pushing it open, Martha stepped from the bright afternoon into the cool, hushed interior. The air inside immediately felt different, stiller, calmer, imbued with the unique, comforting scent of old paper, binding glue, and beeswax polish used on the extensive wooden shelves. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating floating dust motes and casting long rectangles of light across the polished floorboards. The predominant sound was a profound quiet, punctuated only by the soft rustle of turning pages or the occasional muffled footstep on the rug. David, the librarian, was behind the large wooden counter, quietly stamping dates into a book. He looked up as Martha entered, his expression reserved but welcoming. He was a man of few words, but his appreciation for the library and its quiet patrons was evident. "Good afternoon, Martha," he said softly, his voice barely disturbing the stillness. "Good afternoon, David," she replied, her own voice hushed. "Just returning these and perhaps finding one or two more." She placed her canvas bag on the counter, the returned books making a soft thud. David nodded, his movements precise and economical as he processed the returns. Martha wandered toward the fiction shelves, her hand trailing lightly along the smooth, cool wood. She enjoyed the simple act of browsing, scanning the titles, letting her intuition guide her. The sheer presence of so many stories, so many worlds contained between covers, always filled her with a quiet sense of wonder. She paused, pulling out a volume that caught her eye, feeling the satisfying weight of it in her hands, flipping through a few pages, absorbing the feel of the paper, the layout of the text. There was no pressure to choose quickly. Time moved differently here, measured in the slow turning of pages rather than minutes. After selecting two novels that looked promising, one a gentle historical piece, the other a quiet contemporary story, she returned to the counter. David stamped them efficiently, the rhythmic thud of the dater comforting and familiar. "Enjoy your reading," he said, sliding the books towards her. "Thank you, David. I will," she replied, tucking them carefully into her bag. Stepping back out into the afternoon sun felt like emerging from a quiet, contemplative pool. The walk home followed the same gentle rhythm as the walk there, her mind calm, carrying the peaceful atmosphere of the library with her, along with the promise of new stories waiting to be discovered within the pages in her bag. Chapter 4. An Afternoon Mend. Back within the quiet embrace of Oakhaven Cottage, Martha felt the familiar sense of contentment settle over her. The walk and the gentle stimulation of the library had been pleasant, but the return home always felt like coming back to her center. She put the kettle on again, deciding a cup of peppermint tea would be refreshing for the afternoon. While the water heated, she retrieved her mending basket from the cupboard beside the fireplace. Inside lay a soft, moss-green cardigan, a favorite companion on cooler evenings, which had developed a small hole near the cuff. With her steaming mug of tea placed carefully on the small table beside her armchair, Martha settled herself once more in the sunlit corner. The light had shifted since the morning, the sun now lower in the sky, casting longer, warmer shadows across the room. The beam falling through the window now touched the edge of her chair, warming the worn fabric. She picked up the cardigan, letting its soft, familiar weight rest in her lap. The wool felt comforting against her fingers, imbued with the memory of many quiet evenings. From the basket, she selected a spool of matching green darning wool and a fine needle. Threading the needle required a moment of focused attention. Her brow furrowed slightly as she guided the soft thread through the tiny eye. It was a small, quiet victory when it slipped through. She smoothed the area around the hole on the cardigan's cuff, assessing the small unraveling. Mending wasn't a chore for Martha. It was a quiet act of care, of preservation. There was a simple satisfaction in restoring something useful and well-loved, in extending its life rather than discarding it. Her stitches were small and neat, practiced movements honed over years. The needle dipped in and out of the soft wool, weaving a careful patch over the small gap. There was a gentle rhythm to the work, a quiet repetition that allowed her mind to drift peacefully. Her breathing was slow and even. Outside the window, the afternoon sounds continued their gentle symphony, the distant drone of a lawnmower starting up somewhere in the village, the lazy buzz of a fly bumping against the glass, the occasional rustle of leaves as a breeze passed through the oak tree. She paused now and then to take a sip of her tea, the minty warmth spreading through her. She watched the sunbeam creep slowly across the floorboards, inch by inch, highlighting the grain of the wood. A small spider descended on a barely visible thread from the ceiling, paused, and then climbed back up again. Martha observed it without disturbance, accepting its small presence as part of the quiet life of the cottage. Her focus returned to the mending, to the feel of the soft wool, the gentle pull of the thread, the gradual closing of the hole. There was a deep peacefulness in this simple activity. It required just enough attention to keep her mind gently occupied, preventing restless thoughts, but not so much as to be taxing. It felt grounding, connecting her hands to a tangible task, creating something whole again from something slightly broken. The warmth from the sunbeam touched her hand as she worked, a pleasant sensation. She felt her shoulders relax further, any lingering tension from the day seeming to dissolve with each rhythmic stitch. When the mend was complete, nearly invisible against the pattern of the knit, she held it up for inspection, a quiet sense of accomplishment filling her. She snipped the thread, tucked the needle safely back into its case, and folded the cardigan carefully, placing it back in the basket. The sunbeam had moved on, now illuminating a vase of dried hydrangeas on the mantelpiece, their muted colors glowing softly in the light. The afternoon had slipped gently by, marked by the quiet industry of her hands and the peaceful passage of light through her window. She leaned back in her chair, feeling utterly calm, ready for whatever the remainder of the day might bring. Chapter 5. Evening Pages and Starlight. As the afternoon slowly surrendered to evening, the quality of light within the cottage began to change. The warm golden tones faded, replaced by softer hues of gray and lavender filtering through the windows. The air grew cooler, carrying the subtle, sweet perfume of night-scented stock from the garden border just outside. Martha watched the transition from her comfortable armchair, a light shawl draped over her shoulders now, feeling the gentle shift in the day's rhythm. The energetic bird song of the morning had quieted, replaced by the first tentative chirps of crickets, tuning up for their nightly performance. She rose and moved towards the small table lamp beside her chair, its brass base cool beneath her fingers. With a soft click, a warm pool of light bloomed in the corner, pushing back the encroaching shadows and creating an intimate, cozy space. The lamplight reflected softly on the polished wood of the table and glinted on the cover of one of the books she had borrowed from the library earlier. The familiar ritual of lighting the lamp always felt like drawing the curtains against the vastness of the night, creating a small, safe haven of warmth and light within her home. Deciding against another cup of tea, she simply settled back into the chair, the familiar weight of it comforting. She picked up the new book, the historical novel. The cover was smooth cardboard depicting a quiet country scene. Opening it, she breathed in the crisp scent of newer paper, different from her older volumes but still pleasant. She read the first few pages slowly, allowing herself to sink into the different time and place conjured by the words. The house was deeply quiet now, the only sounds the soft rustle of the pages as she turned them and the steady reassuring tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Outside, the sky deepened from twilight gray to a dark velvety blue. Through the window, Martha could see the first few stars beginning to prick the darkness. They seemed distant and serene, watching over the sleeping village. The world outside her window felt hushed, peaceful. Inside, the lamplight created a gentle focus, drawing her attention inward towards the story unfolding in her lap. The weight of the book felt good, solid. Her breathing was slow and regular, a quiet rhythm in the stillness of the room. She read for perhaps an hour, completely absorbed in the narrative. The characters came alive in her imagination, their quiet lives unfolding against the backdrop of a different era. Occasionally, she would pause, her gaze drifting toward the darkened window pane, reflecting the cozy lamplit scene within. She felt a profound sense of peace, of being exactly where she was meant to be, enveloped in the quiet comfort of her home, lost in the gentle embrace of a story. The repetitive element of reading, the steady movement of her eyes across the lines, the soft turn of each page had a lulling effect. A sense of pleasant drowsiness began to steal over her. Her eyelids felt heavier, the words on the page slightly less sharp. She wasn't fighting the feeling, but welcoming it as a natural conclusion to a peaceful day. She carefully marked her place in the book with a ribbon bookmark and placed it back on the table. Leaning her head back against the soft cushions of the armchair, she closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds, the clock, the distant crickets, the almost imperceptible sigh of the wind around the cottage eaves. She felt the gentle weight of tiredness settle upon her limbs, a comfortable heaviness inviting rest. The warmth from the lamp seemed to spread through the air, enhancing the feeling of cozy security. There were no urgent tasks left, no demands on her time, only the quiet invitation to let go and drift toward sleep. Slowly she rose from the chair, her movements deliberate and gentle, switching off the lamp, plunged the room into soft darkness, lit only by the faint starlight filtering through the window. She moved quietly towards the staircase, ready to surrender to the peace of the night, carrying the calm contentment of her day with her into her dreams.